Happy Friday once again. I hope you had a great week. We have a great session today. Um, so this session will be recorded and available on our website next week. We in our office, we believe that engagement takes place synchronously and asynchronously. So while the session is ongoing, feel free to use the chat to ask questions. My colleague David Desormier will be helping me monitor the chat. So what you see here is the course production team. So for the sake of time, we can't have everybody introduce themselves. So this is a team that is here to help you. Our IDs, many of our IDs are here today. Like I said earlier, use the chat to ask questions. And first, I would like you to use the chat to introduce yourself, your name, who you are, your department. And most important, I would like you to share in the chat a question that you came here with today, right? A question related to today's session or any other question for that matter. Our instructional designers are here to help answer those questions and are going to help Melissa answer some of these questions. And if we are not able to get to the questions by the end of the 1 hour, we will reach out to you afterward. And next, I would like to share a few announcements. The deadline for the fall application for Jumpstart program is Monday, September 11th. So if you are interested in joining our fall Jumpstart cohort, Monday, September 11th is the deadline to sign up. If you're interested, email me. I think we have the link to sign up, probably will be shared in the chat. And next week, September 12th at noon, we have our online learning community of practice series that will be led by Dr. Christina Good, is also on student engagement. And the next thing that's happening on September special office hours. Last week, for many of you who attended the OLCAP, we had a great discussion around AI and its use in teaching. And so we thought we might offer more opportunities to have conversations. So you don't have to sign up. The link to join the special office hour will be also shared in the chat. If you want to join us on September 19th, that will be led by Dr. Jason Johnston. And finally, we have an open house for the multimedia house of multimedia studio on September 21st from 3 to 6 p.m. The link to sign up will be shared in the chat, but for those of you who are familiar with where the multimedia studio is in the KPB building, the Kingston Pike building. So you can sign up or you can just show up, and we'll be happy to talk to you then from 3 to 6 on September 21st. And now I am going to introduce to you today's speaker, Melissa Grant. She has 10 years of experience teaching undergraduate students. Her experience includes curriculum strategy and planning, curriculum design, assessment, and the implementation of high-impact practices for student engagement. Melissa's leadership and decision-making are guided by ethical leadership theory with attributes that include a commitment to evidence-based practices, a student-centered teaching philosophy, and advocating for equitable policies. So I am going to hand it over now to Melissa to get us started.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. And thank you for the kind introduction. And I have to give a disclaimer that my commitment to evidence-based practices goes out the window today. A lot of what we talk about, I've found in asynchronous learning is based on our own lived experiences, and our lives are changing so quickly in this teaching modality that sometimes the research can't keep up with us. I was reading an article yesterday and I thought, is this from 1982? And it was from 2017. So, so I'm going to jump right in and get started today. And in the interest of being a good host, is there any concerns with being able to hear me before I get started?
We can hear
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Okay, so I work in the Haslam College of Business, and I work for the Office of Professional and Career Development. I design curriculum for a course we call BUAD 200. It focuses on leadership and communication. It's a required course for all undergraduate students. So I design the curriculum for the class. I teach 150 students in the class myself every semester. And then I recruit staff on campus to teach the 1 credit class as an ESP, extra service pay experience. So I manage about 20 to 25 instructors each semester. Some are continuously teach over and over, some come in and out. And so this presentation today is based not only on my own experience, but on the experience of trying to inspire instructors to expand their understanding of asynchronous learning, student engagement, and in layman's terms, basically convince them that asynchronous teaching is still teaching. That's the obstacle there. So today we're going to focus on your work and personal related needs and how that relates to student communication, explore some of the advantages and disadvantages. My goal is to that all asynchronous instructors will abandon email one day. And then we're going to talk about some specific platforms, pros and cons. So before we jump in, I would like to ask the group to think about, and in the chat, share an initial thought that comes to mind when you think about the possibility of communicating with 100 or more students a semester through text messages. So it looks like most of the responses are the general response that all new instructors to the curriculum that I work in have. Most of them are teaching asynchronous for the first time, and they want to kind of keep their email life alive, and I'm trying to convince them not to. And so I'm going to share with you today some of the tips and best practices that I use and how using chat instead of email has actually made my teaching experience more enjoyable and made my communication with students less hectic, less overwhelming, and less invasive. Those are just some of the words I saw that I think are very normal responses. So we all know as teachers, for covering professors to instructors and everyone in between, that the benefit of in-person communication in a classroom is the top 3. Presence, we're there. They know we exist. They know we're there to teach them. Our responsiveness, we are able to respond in a timely manner, in a positive manner, in a way that makes the student feel valuable. And then personalization is our responses are specific to that student. Those are the 3 top benefits to in-person communication. And that comes from the literature as well when we look at literature on in-person communication versus asynchronous. So I'm here to advocate that we can accomplish these 3 qualifications in asynchronous learning as well, letting the student know that we're present, responsive, and that we are speaking to them as individuals. So in an asynchronous online class, and using some of the literature as well as experience, mediated presence was positively influenced by a frequency of interaction. A mediated presence means that in a place where a person does not actually exist, others believe that person does. They have the feelings that go along with having a person present. Responsiveness was also improved through individualized messages. And when responsiveness is lacking, student engagement is impacted negatively. That has also been my own personal experience. And finally, personalization impacts a student's perception that their teacher is actually present in the class and is teaching them. That directly reflects our evaluations at the end of the class. This is a common example of a student communication through text. This student was a frequent flyer, meaning we texted together probably 1 to 2 times a week. He felt very comfortable reaching out to me. And I'm not perfect. I'm not claiming to be perfect, but I thought this was a good example of how over time, when you use a text style of communication with students, we naturally include those 3 qualifications of communication. So I have given my presence, hopefully, is reflected in the fact that I gave this student an explanation for my answer. I said, I don't require a variety of different people giving feedback. They can be friends because most of us don't have 3 people in our life who are willing to give us some honest feedback. So hopefully it feels, it wasn't just a yes and no. You'll see that the student apologized for reaching out. That's very common. And so hopefully I personalized it and made him feel that he was an included member in the class by just reminding him that's what I'm here for. Something that doesn't necessarily come through in email in an immediate space. Email takes time, and I'm going to go back to that before I talk about email is an asynchronous process. We send it, we wait, they send it back. Most of us, I believe, in our syllabus would have a 48 business hour reply expectation for student email. So in that reply time, a whole lot of stuff can pop up, and people tend to wonder, are they going to respond? When are they going to respond? And so it's an asynchronous process that is embedded into an already asynchronous class. And that is my probably biggest argument against using email as a primary form of communication with asynchronous students is I'm looking to break down the barriers of asynchronousness, if that's a word. I don't think it is, and make it more personal for our students. So how did I get to this place? COVID happened. I feel like so many of our conversations start that way. Our class was predominantly in person, and we had to move online, and I immediately felt like it was a correspondence course because it wasn't designed to be online, and students were emailing me. I had 150 of them like crazy, and all of a sudden I started waking up in the morning and I didn't want to open my email. I was like, what is this weird feeling? And after doing some research, I learned that email anxiety is real, and it's very common for our students as well. So when they send us that email, while they're waiting for our reply, they're worried that their assignment didn't go through, that the video didn't upload, that they're going to not get their question answered before the due date, because in reality, many of them are not doing the work 48 business hours prior to the due date. So email anxiety is real for our students. And I would encourage us to think about how we feel about our own email. Are there times that we just don't want to open that button? We just don't want to go to it because we know. For me personally, I don't have assignments due on Sunday night because I don't want to start my Monday bombarded with questions. I like to ease into it. So I really encourage the instructors that I recruit to teach in our curriculum to approach student communication, not just from what the students need, but what you all need, what they need for their own well-being. Because when we show up happy, our students know that through our written word and our communication, and they benefit from that. I won't ask you to share if you've ever had anxiety, email anxiety, but if you have and you think that you're alone, you are not. It is throughout the literature, interestingly enough. And the biggest selling point that I have for you all is this quote right here. We can now, through asynchronous learning, be in two places at once. And we can do what we love to do. This is an academic conference, but you know, in-person classes, if I wanted to take a vacation or I went to a conference, I was constantly having to check my email. I was trying to make sure students didn't have any crises while I was gone. And this an asynchronous style of learning has enabled me to really kind of be my best self in multiple places at the same time. I'll give a quick plug and Igor didn't ask me to do this. I have learned to love asynchronous learning. It is my preferred method of teaching now because I participated in the Jumpstart program. And Tina was my person, and just it really made a huge difference. So if you're considering doing that, do it. I'm often amazed at how much I got out of that. And they never sent me a bill. This was fascinating. So really looking at asynchronous learning as teaching, I tell my instructors, asynchronous learning is learning. And I tell students that too. It's not a correspondence course. I'm not sending you a packet of information. We need to engage with each other. So for those of you who are thinking to yourself, oh, this whole text chat process is overwhelming, I have about 50% of my instructors and almost all of the ones who are common returning instructors have embraced chat as their primary way of communicating with students and will gladly admit that it has made their life a lot more enjoyable as a teacher. So some of the platforms that are available to us as staff at UT one is Ring Central. If your office has Ring Central, there is an app that goes with that you can put on your laptop and phone, and you provide your students with your office phone number and they can text you. There is Zoom Team Chat. That's the one I currently use. There's Google Chat, Microsoft Teams, and probably many others that I'm not referencing today because as an asynchronous teacher, I naturally try to avoid information by fire hose. It's part of who I am now. And the reason I just want to highlight, sometimes people will say, well, what about Canvas chat feature? The common theme of all of these chat features is that they're individual and personal between you and the student. They're not public platforms, so that the student has that personalization experience and can reach out to you directly and have that teaching experience. I will also give the FERPA disclaimer. If a student has a question about a specific grade, they can send me the chat question, but I will always answer a specific grading question. I'll send them the message through Canvas still. Before I move into getting into the platforms in more detail, are there any questions? Okay. So let's talk about Ring Central first. Ring Central, like I said, it works through your department phone number, and it depends on the department on whether or not you have it. I didn't set up my Ring Central. I thought the idea of not having a phone in my office was the most glorious and amazing thing I had ever heard, and so I didn't do it. I use Zoom Team Chat. Well, that has worked perfectly as these students of juniors and seniors in high school were on Zoom through the end of their high school and they came to college. And now this year, my students do not know what Zoom is. I have little screenshots with step-by-step instructions on how to set this up. And just the idea of logging in through SSO is just baffling them. So I'm getting my Ring Central set up and I'm going to try it out next semester. I am always willing to pilot and try something new and pivot when it doesn't work. So I can't share. I know that screenshots can be shared through the Ring Central app. It works through your phone. The student does not, it comes from the student's cell phone number, and it allows for calls and text. So you may find Ring Central to be a more invasive option because technically a student could call you because it's your office phone number. I have instructors who use Ring Central and they prefer it because all of these features have D&D options. You know, in our syllabus, I say I'm available for me personally because my job is to teach 150 students. I can be available 9 to 4 Monday through Friday. That's my thing. And then I put my app on D&D and I don't even see if they've talked to me until I get back on Monday, unless I voluntarily open it over the weekend because I just want to see if anybody needs it. Depends on where I am in my own personal space. One of the disadvantages of Ring Central versus Zoom chat is you won't know who's texting you if they don't tell you. So on Zoom chat, I can see, because they log in through their SSO, I can see the student's first and last name, even if they don't tell me. And in Ring Central, you'll only see the phone number. So you may have to say, who is this again? What class are you in? I use Zoom Team Chat. I think it allows me to keep everything in one place. So if I'm chatting with a student and we realize, you know what, we need to hop on a video, but we don't have time to do that till tomorrow, I can just, in the same exact app, schedule the Zoom call for tomorrow, get them the link, we're good to go. There have also been times in the chat that I will be like, you know what, why don't we hop on real quick? And why don't you share your screen with me and let me see what's going on? It kind of also helps the students learn how to use new platforms of technology, because that's one of their career readiness competencies, is they need to feel comfortable trying new things in terms of technology. Features I like about Zoom chat is if it keeps my files that I send automatically. So if I start to get a recurring question, I can just reuse the same screenshot. I can include a voice message if I want. I have gotten really fast at grabbing screenshots out of my Canvas app on my phone and including them in a chat. And I promise, if I can get fast at it, you can too. Anyone can. It might feel a little cumbersome the first semester, but what chat does that email doesn't do is it gives you a peace of mind that there's nothing waiting for you. You have it in your hand. Whether we admit it or not, our brain naturally knows what's waiting for us. And if we don't know what that is, we're thinking about what's waiting for us. Maybe outlier people don't have that, but most human beings do. So if I'm in line at Starbucks in the library, I can respond to a chat, and then I can have my coffee knowing that everyone who needs me is taken care of. And I see some chats are coming, so please let me know if questions are coming up to my
Hi,
moderator.
Melissa. Melissa, just
Yeah.
we have one participant. Is the Zoom chat class specific?
I teach 3 different class sections, and I do not make them class specific for me. If you set up a class specific group, that will not have the individualization that a direct one-on-one chat will have. So I personally do not set them up in classes, but there is the ability to do that if you want to communicate with your class as a whole, and then encourage them to personally reach out to you for the individual needs.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Other similar platforms include Google Chat, We know that a lot of our students come to UTK straight out of high school, where Google is an equalizer in terms of access. And when they get to UTK, they don't always know that other platforms are available. As a business person who is training professional business students, I want them to kind of get out of Google and start to expand their knowledge of Microsoft and let them know that they have access to all of these platforms at no cost. I want them to go into the workforce beyond Google. But I have an instructor who works in residence life. He uses the same Google phone number for his housing needs and his teaching needs for years, and that works for him. And the students think they're texting him, but really it's going to his, I believe he sends his to his Gmail, and that's how he handles it. I have an instructor who's using Microsoft Teams this semester. It will be the first time I've had an instructor use Microsoft Teams in the classroom. So we're talking, he's sharing with me some things that are working, some things that maybe he's, I need to do that differently because it's, one of his biggest obstacles is the students' hesitation to Microsoft. He's got to make sure they know that they have access to Microsoft at no cost. So his syllabus quiz, where I call them the breadcrumb assignments, he included a question about access to Microsoft for the students to make sure that they read that information. Because we know in asynchronous learning, we need little breadcrumbs sometimes to get them to the really important things. Are there other platforms that anyone on this meeting today have used that you want to share with the team before I move on? Okay, well, if you come across any, please, if you don't remember who I am, send it to Igor and say, send this to that lady who talked to us, because I'm always interested in new technology. I didn't think I would get so excited about technology and learning, but there were pros and cons. So this is an example of how I use the personal space in Zoom chat, but every platform has I can't speak for RingCentral, but Microsoft Teams also has a personal space. So this is an example of me maintaining, I have 150 students. We have an event that these students have to go to. So I've said, if you can't make it, you have to let me know in advance. So it may be send me your schedule, have your boss email me, what are your circumstances? But I'm not going to enter grades for this event for 2 more weeks. How do I keep track of all the students I'm talking to? And I just keep a running note in my personal space. So the Haslam Prepared Career Fair, these are the students who have replied to me that need an alternative assignment. Macy might. So if I go to enter Macy's grade, actually in her case, I'll just put like a little thumbs up. That's my sign to me that I've resolved it. She got her problem worked out and she's going to be there. Jonathan, thumbs up. I've got his excuse. He's good to go. Kendall, I may not. I'm not gonna have an indicator that I've completed that, so that when I go to enter my grades, I can go back to my personal space and look at all of the students that are still hanging out there and make sure I don't give them a grade when instead I was waiting for them or they were waiting for me from the alternative assignment. It just helps me present myself to my students in a way that sounds like I'm not always saying, now what did we decide again? Let me find that again. It gives this illusion to my students that I'm hyper organized and I remember each of our individual conversations. And I am publicly willing to announce to the world that I am an inattentive ADHD adult, have been since the day I was born, according to my mother. And so the chat feature really helps with that because it's kind of constant, but the personal space is how I keep track of everything and use all those behavioral techniques that help me stay organized. So my students think that that I remember them personally, and I don't. So I want to share with you some of my pros to using a text platform with your students. And before I go through this list, I want to say something. When we moved from in-person to asynchronous online, there was a lot of hesitation, myself included. And I had to do some soul searching. Why? The reality is I'm a human being and I felt good. My ego got a little bump every time I walked into a classroom, a head nod, a thank you, Miss Grant. Have a great weekend. Those are the aspects of teaching that all of us kind of came into this job to do. We love that part. And in email, I don't have that. It's just constant replying. In chat, I have that again. I can send you example. Thank you so much for your quick reply. And I think I actually have some of those in this presentation. I have one that I didn't share with you all. I was in Florida and something had gone wrong in my Canvas account. So I had to pull over in the country and fix it. And this student, after were chatting, she says, enjoy Hillbilly, Florida. And she has a picture of a hillbilly. And those are the student reactions and the student engagements that we went into in-person teaching for that I promise you can get if you use a chat feature. So back to the boring pros though, it eliminates the to-do list that's building in my brain. I don't wonder what's out there. I get my own need of positive interaction because they do. They'll say, thank you so much for replying. And you will have a couple of frequent flyers, just like you do in in-person classes. In in-person classes, there's one or two that stay back and talk to you and just really kind of seal that 1 to 2 hours into a nice package. And you're going to have that same dynamic through using a chat feature in your class. They come in, they check in with you, and I have in here never seen their face. So here's something if you do this to get used to. And you all know as asynchronous teachers, if you have a student smiling at you in the hallway and you've never seen that student before, and you realize they know you because you've been their teacher. On a side funny note, I walked out of the bathroom stall one day and this girl looks at me and I'm like, oh gosh, immediately, do I have toilet paper? What's going on? And she was in a conversation. So I washed my hands. She ends her conversation and she turns around and she says, you're Miss Grant. And I was like, yeah. She's like, you're my teacher. And I was like, okay, good. So that's the best response when somebody's shocked to see you walk out of a bathroom stall. So those are the things that she felt like she had a relationship with me when she told me her name. I was like, oh, I know you, because we had communicated so many times and I just hadn't seen her face yet. So these are some of the just messages that I've gotten that you can expect. I've gotten more than 4. Thank you for responding quickly. Thank you for always having timely responses and resolutions. And when they're saying the word timely to me, we're not talking 5 minutes. It's just within the same day. I make a point. I like to have my stuff resolved. These students are learning how to learn on their own. They're scared of it. Not all of them are in an asynchronous class by choice. So it just gives them that. Thanks for everything. And then the one is the students like, oh, that was dumb on my part. I am surprised how many students run themselves down in my chat with them. And I wouldn't say that they did that in in-person classes. So I'm able to say to this person who is a young female, don't insult yourself. Don't do it. And hopefully those are the ways that the personalization can come through as well. So I see our chats are adding up. So again, interrupt me if you have questions that present themselves.
Melissa, we do have one question that we've been in the chat room, and that's the use of Slack. Have you heard of Slack before as a chat tool? I know our online learning team uses it at a team level, but just curious to get your thoughts if you used it.
Yeah, so Slack was huge when we all went remote at first, and I had used Slack prior to that. And like any platform, I think people, they ebb and flow. Some get burned out on it. Um, I don't use Slack, but I don't see why students can't use Slack. I think Slack has a lot of value. It's very equivalent to a Microsoft Teams um, when when you're working in a team environment. So I don't, I can't speak to its pros and cons, except for the fact that it wouldn't be so prevalent if it wasn't doing something right. And I think that the biggest thing is try what works for you and then just change it the next time. If you're like, I want to see what this is like I'm going to try Ring Central next semester because I'm having trouble getting students to, they don't have the pre knowledge of Zoom that they did 2 years ago. It may work, it may not. And then I'll go back to it.
Great, thank you so much. We also have another question in the chat. Can you go into more detail about how you balance making time for chat, meeting expectations of students, and also tuning out outside of hours?
Yes. So the first one is, how do I make time for it? It is actually much faster for me than email. So when I reply to an email, I guess over time, my professional brain has been trained to reply to email. It's as I think about my reply to students the same way I would think about my reply to Dean Mangum. And that's ridiculous. My students don't need that from me. They just need me to tell them. And so it's quick, it's on my phone or on my laptop. And I just find it's much faster for me. I can do it quickly. It wasn't like that my first semester, but I got in my groove. So I keep my Canvas app and my Zoom app next to each other. So yesterday I needed to show someone something. I opened my Canvas teacher app, screenshotted the module, and I even now I'm fast enough. I threw an arrow in there and was like, go here. Okay, great. Thank you. Because the student had asked me a question in a way that I knew they had tried. And let me pivot and say this. I have a disclaimer in my syllabus that students need to learn to communicate professionally. And one of those requirements is they have to tell me what specifically they've tried that isn't working before they ask me the question. When I first went into an asynchronous class, I found students like, I don't understand the assignment. And here I am basically reteaching them. And then I was like, are they just trying to get a condensed version out of me so they don't have to read all the material? That's kind of cynical on my part, but not not completely unrealistic. It wasn't everybody, maybe 5%, but it takes time. So if somebody asks me an open-ended question that's going to require a long response, I my I go back to our communication method and let me know exactly what's not working for you so I can better help you. I don't want to just repeat everything I've said in Canvas because if that's not working for you, that's not going to work this time either. And they will very often text me back and say, found it, got it, thanks. So there's that little kind of off disclaimer. You would also, be surprised at how many students ask you a question and you design the class so you can answer the question really quickly. Now, the next question was outside of hours. So both Ring Central and Zoom Chat, and I'm assuming Slack and Microsoft Teams, have a feature where you can put yourself on Do Not Disturb. So my Zoom chat stays, I set it from 4 p.m. to 9 a.m. and it automatically goes on Do Not Disturb. So no notifications come through. I don't get any notifications. I don't know when I'm using my phone on the weekend with my family, I don't know who's in there, and I'm okay with that. I don't have any assignments due on Monday, so I don't think the whole thing's falling apart. And then sometimes I'll be like, I wonder what's going on, and I'll open it. And I'll have one student, and I always tell them, you might hear from me on a weekend, but never expect it. and I've never had anybody say, oh, I sent you and you didn't reply. More often it's like, I know it's outside of your hours, but, and I want them to do that. I want them to text me at 9 o'clock if that's when their question is, knowing that I'll get back to them the next day. But I don't want them to have to try to remember. Like, let's just do it while you're thinking about it. I've almost always, I've always had students apologize for sending me a message outside of hours, even though they don't need to, because they don't know I'm on D&D. But does that answer the questions?
I believe so. Also, we have another question that kind of came up, and this is kind of more just about kind of dealing with the multiple platforms. You know, someone in the chat says they're on email constantly. Responding quickly to students via email seems really simple. This press said they can shift the conversation to Zoom easily when images, if it's helpful, but to keep track of class-related projects, it's really bothersome. Is there some other benefit that besides that, or is there, that can overcome that challenge?
Yeah, so I find that the people who use email the most as instructors, as teachers, and really love it and still love teaching, might not need that feedback that some of us get from teaching in person. So, you know, whoever asked the question, I'm not speaking to you directly, but still feel like they are valued through email. And someone like myself might need a little more an informal conversation. So if my argument, for lack of a better word to that, are the three features that I talked about early in the presentation. So the students feeling our presence, the students feeling personalized, and our responsiveness. So the responsiveness can still be done via email. Absolutely. The person who asked the question clearly is doing a great job of that. And the students still also get that personalization. So it's the presence part. If your student evaluations say that they feel like you are there and with them, and you know they feel that way through email, then you should sign up to do one of these to teach the rest of us how to do that through email as well, and give people options. Because I can't do that. I have a more serious communication style. My voice and the way I talk and write so I don't always come across that way. And so having a chat feature, you know, there's emojis and reactions and just different ways that I can best help students feel my presence that I can't do through email. Did that answer the question?
I hope so. But if not, Rebecca, feel free to post another question if you need to in the chat.
So there are some cons, and I see, and I wanted to kind of put these out here. Students in an asynchronous course might need you to walk them to the platform. So whether it be, I'm going to give you 5 points for checking in with me on Zoom chat or Slack or Ring Central, or putting a question. So for mine, I put it in my syllabus quiz, so that they are forced to go find that information, just like we do with other key important aspects of asynchronous learning. Follow up quickly. So if you're a 48-hour reply person, you could get lost in the chats could get lost, and you could get lost in yourself if you've got that 150 number of students. But I manage that by using my personal space. So I just throw notes in there. I'm the only person who can see it. And then I can get back to them when I do that when I'm on the run, and then I can get back to them. Some students want to send an email because it kicks the problem down the road. I can't get my Canvas video to record, and if they send me a text, I'm going to solve that problem. If they send me an email, that buys them usually about 24 hours. I would say that's maybe one or two out of 150 students. And what I'll typically do is say, let's hop on a Zoom and I'll talk to them about it. And then every year, students have a new understanding of technology. So what worked for me 2 years ago is shifting a little now. And so I'm going to shift and see if that helps. So just, we can never get set in our ways. I would say those are the cons. So my recommendations, whatever platform you decide to use when you give this chat feature a try, is have the app on your phone and your laptop, because it will enable you to go back to that slide where I said we can be in two places at once. As higher ed professionals, we can be our best self in multiple locations when we're doing asynchronous learning, and having that, not having to have our laptop with us, we can still be the best teacher we can be with just our phone. I recommend being overly kind in messages to cut through any anxieties the students have. So I will start, just like we do an email, good to hear from you, have a great afternoon. If they send you something, thank you, just doing a reaction so they know the conversation's over. So there's a way to really make students feel good about communicating in our class and about us as their teachers through this process that I personally don't get out of email. I probably could, but it's not as immediate and I don't think as impactful. Set guidelines for communication time and response expectations. Just set that. And I think I already talked about that. You will not get as many people bombarding you as you think you will. And then using screenshots to supplement messages. It takes just a touch of time to get comfortable with that. If you're not, but you screenshot it, edit it to the place you need it, right directly on your phone, and attach it to your message. And that helps the students get a visual answer to their question. It increases your sense of presence, and it means that you're not going back and forth with the person all the time. So all those things that we do in email, you can do there too. So some of my final reflections are that asynchronous classes physically bring the learning to the student. That is, I tell students, I'm like, I am bringing all of this to your house. All you have to do is open it up and read it or watch it. Like, what more could you ask for? And yet, students do tend to forget the value of asynchronous learning, and they ignore the things that feel complicated, like navigating their own learning. So having this chat feature has enabled me to be there when those learning anxieties pop up, because they know that they're going to hear from me in a timely and welcoming manner, in a way that email could provide, but it just, when my husband emails me something, I'm like, why are you emailing me? I'm your wife, like chat just has a little bit of a better feature, and we chat with the people who we feel most comfortable with. And I try to bring that to this process. And so with that being said, that's my pitch for the value of using a chat platform in asynchronous learning. And I hope that anyone who had fear or expectation is thinking, well, maybe I'm going to give this a try. And I would like to open it up to questions. But before I do, I'm going to stop sharing. I would like to say that if you want to talk to me further, we can hop on a video call and I can answer personal, questions personal to my use that are more detailed, or kind of show you more of how I use it. If you want to, talk to a student or two, I can have you do that. I have one or two students who I would feel, past students who I would feel comfortable doing an email introduction and letting you ask some questions about how that experience went from their perspective. So what questions do you have for me? I see a comment that says, It sounds like students are building parasocial relationships with asynchronous instructors, much like social media influencers. That's like the best compliment. What a way to end a week.
I'm looking at the chat. Ria made a comment. She said she used Ring Central and she recommended Remind 101. Ria, would you mind sharing a bit about how you've used Remind 101, perhaps?
Yeah, Remind 101 is great for sending out messages, but also students can use it almost like a social media platform. They can post pictures, they can do all kinds of things. So it becomes like a little in-class social media platform, and you can, build that class camaraderie, and you can build a different link for every single one of your courses.
Thank you.
And if you sign up for Jumpstart, they will also introduce you to various platforms and help us, they help us, or they taught me about various platforms that I've been able to try too.
Yeah. I see another comment from Tanya Hussein. She said she used Ring Central. Tanya, if I may ask you, have you used the chat feature in Ring Central?
So Ring Central is really more, it is like a text message. They can text, if you're sitting they can text you through the Ring Central app, and you can reply to them from your email while you're sitting there. So it's, instead of having your email open, you can reply to Ring Central.
There's one more question in the chat for Marianne. Is there an option in the chat to make it private or public so everybody can see and answer?
In which chat?
Marianne, you're referring to Zoom chat?
Well, you said you use the chat for the one-on-one, the student communication with you. But like if you have a lot of students, like I have 250 students in the class, there are a lot of questions that are just also pertaining to everybody. And so is an option though the students can choose, oh, I want to talk to the instructor, or this is for everybody, please chime in or something.
Gotcha. Okay, that is a great question. So on the Zoom team chat, it is individual. You can set up a class. You can set up a all class. I personally don't do that because I have found in asynchronous learning, because the students don't know each other, they're not as inclined to use a group announcement kind of back and forth. That may be different for other people. So if I have a question that I get asked, let's say 5 or 6 times from one class, and it says to me, okay, I've been unclear about something, I will post that in the Canvas announcement, because in my syllabus, announcements are supplemental learning material from module to module. And then the latest announcements always posted pinned to the top of the homepage. So that's why I still go back to Canvas for basically to keep the students and my accountability in the same place. I use it 100% for individual chat.
Thank you, Melissa. I think it's almost 1 o'clock. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Melissa, for taking the time to put together this presentation. We hope to see you in 2 weeks for a BrownBag. In the meantime, next week, like I said, we have open office hours, and Monday is the deadline for sign up for Jumpstart. If you're interested, again, thank you all, and I hope you all have a great weekend.